This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Good evening and welcome to the Late Tuesday Night Show. I'm Natalie Marr, and you can join me for the next hour where I'll be discussing the importance of how we get people to start, stay and lead in teaching, recruitment and retention with my guest, Kelly Brown.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Hello and welcome to the show. I'm here on Teachers Talk Radio, 9 till 10 p.m, alternate Tuesdays on the Late Show. I cover a variety of topics live, and you can listen back to the previous shows and, in fact, all the Teachers Talk Radio shows. And previously, I discussed the importance of co-curricular with Nicole Tremblay and gifted students and mental health and well-being with Sylvia Garrido Soriano. Let me introduce myself to those of you who are new to my show. So my name's Natalie. I'm a drama specialist and director of drama. Previously, I've been head of arts faculty, and I've got just over 20 years teaching experience in various secondary schools settings in Essex, Hertfordshire, and London. Alongside teaching full-time, I have a fortnightly theatre review podcast called Theatre Audience Podcast. So tonight's topic is on recruitment and retention in teaching. The big question we're posing this evening is, how do we get people to start, stay, and lead? And I'll be discussing this with my guest, Kelly Brown. Kelly's worked as a teacher, educator, and senior leader in London secondary schools for over 23 years. And she's completing a doctorate in education. Kelly's thesis is a reflection of her work on the issues around recruitment and retention of teachers and the intersectional challenges faced by women in educational leadership. So hopefully Kelly's with me, and good evening.
Hi, Natalie.
Hello, how are you?
Well, I'm very excited to be here. This is my thing, and I think you've got to be passionate about something in life, haven't you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's a Tuesday evening. It's very late. We're teachers, but strangely, we have a lot of energy considering it's the toughest term of the year for full-time teachers in secondary schools.
Indeed. But it's, I think the thing is, we always look to the next holiday, and I suppose it's about thinking about trying to fill that time with positivity. So I'm going to try to be very positive.
Absolutely. And on that note, what was your route into teaching over 23 years ago, Kelly?
I think for me, it was starting in an office-based job when I left university and realizing quite quickly that it wasn't for me. I think it just, I don't want to knock anybody else's profession, but just sitting in front of a screen and not being able to move around and engage and do things which were different day to day, it just didn't feel right. So I kind of went down the old-fashioned PGCE route and went to a London university and really enjoyed the whole experience, and stepped into a classroom and instantly fell in love with all the chaos and the smell of pencil sharpeners and board markers, and really loved it.
And when we say things like board markers and these things, obviously these things are kind of obsolete now because a lot of what we do is completely online, whiteboards, smart boards, interactive boards, anything
I think
that
so.
the marker pens, which I miss.
Yeah, I mean, I do. I think it's great that things have changed a little bit, because I think it just means that children have more access to what we do. So I love that part of it. I love the fact that it does change. I think I get bored quite quickly. So I enjoy that aspect of teaching. No day is ever the same, which is really, really nice.
Yeah, exactly. And we're constantly on the ball. We're constantly thinking on our feet, and the challenges that we're facing on a day-to-day basis, and no day is the same. Your timetable is different from day to day. You're teaching different year groups. You switch, one minute it's A level, the next minute it's a year 7 class. Everything is different from minute to minute. So how then, Kelly, do we get people to start, to stay, and to lead?
Well, I don't have all the answers, but what I would say is I think we have to be mindful that when, as teachers, we're probably one of the first professions children actually see. They come to school and they see somebody working. And I think they learn quite quickly. It's quite a hard gig. Even young children will say to teachers, "Gosh, you've got a lot to do today," or, "Miss So and so or Mr. So and so is running around the classroom and with lots to do." I think for me, and I don't want to sound corny, Natalie, but if I'm being
Mhm.
really honest, I started teaching because I was inspired by probably about two or three teachers in particular. I'm not saying the others weren't great, but two or three which stand out. And I just wanted to be like them. And I grew up in Brixton in South London. And we went to school kind of, not far from there, but I think, I was really aware that not everybody had access to really positive teaching around me. So I think that what we need to do is, I think, just by making the profession seem worthwhile. And if everybody kind of, and I don't mean teachers, because we know how good we are, but if people just kind of showed that value for what we have to do, because I don't think we just teach. That's the thing. I think we go into it thinking we'll just teach, content, but actually we're doing a bit of nursing, we're doing a little bit of counseling, we're doing little bit of acting. It's all of these kinds of things. So I think really getting people into the profession is having honest conversations about what the profession involves, um, really showing the positive side to what we do and the impact we can make, and also opening it up to different teachers, people that may be interested, but just, you know, maybe they don't know how to do it, how to get involved, how to train as teachers. So really putting it up there in the same way that we would do work experience for other professions, and just, giving it that value, I think really helps.
Yeah, because I think there's always a misconception. Forgive me if I'm wrong. Obviously, the majority of our audience are going to be people who are educators or in the teaching profession. So this is kind of a big up to the teachers, but you know, people outsiders of the education sector, they do. I don't think they realize just how much I do, just how much we do, just how much everyone does on a daily basis. I think there is this preconception that we come in, we do our jobs, and at 3 o'clock we're in our cars driving home, um, and kind of that's it. And because everyone, or most people, went to school for a period of time at some point in their lives, they think that they understand what teaching is. And depending on what their experience was in the school setting in which they went, they will have different sort of preconceived ideas of what teaching is. Um, and also what teaching was when we were at school and what teaching is now has changed massively. And over the last 20 years, the teaching profession has changed massively, in terms of what we do on a daily basis, and in terms of how we do that and action that.
I think so, and I think certain aspects of it have become more positive. I mean, I started teaching when there would be gosh, rooms of children who didn't access the full curriculum. Nobody really, discussed why that was the case. They found school very challenging for whatever reason, and they were kind of hidden away. That I suppose, I mean, I don't want to make the profession sound really bad from years ago, but there wasn't that understanding, there wasn't that adaptive approach that I think that we have now. So that is really, the positive side to teaching, that it has made those changes. And I think for me, I just would love for more people to think about, becoming teachers. I think young people need people who are going to speak up for them. And yes, I'm biased. I think it's the best profession in the world, but there's just so much I think people can offer to young people now. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, we might want to let our listeners tonight into a little secret, and that is that we actually went to secondary school together. So we were in the same year group and the same school setting. So some of those teachers that you've mentioned may well have been the teachers that inspired me. And it is really funny because, when you talk to any teacher, that is when you have time to sit down and talk to a teacher in the staff room, because generally, invariably, we're all running around doing 100 things, different clubs. I mean, I teach drama, so I don't get a lunchtime because my lunchtime is rehearsing, is doing musical theatre club, is doing drama clubs, is generally being busy and hoping to inspire children and help those that are enthusiastic to engage in their passion. But I won't mention them by name, but there was one particular. I think you had a different English teacher to me, actually, but they were all pretty good and very inspirational. But there was one in particular whom I absolutely adored, and she taught me English and she taught me drama, and she inspired within me a passion for Shakespeare that has never left me to this day. And I only hope that I can do, rest in peace, Miss Bibbins. But I
Oh,
can only hope that I have tried to give a piece of that to the students that I have taught over the last 20 odd years, whether it be those that I've directed in Macbeth or A Midsummer Night's Dream, or The Tempest, or whichever Shakespeare I have chosen for them, or whether it's been in the classroom when we've been engaging with the text, or whether it's been taking them, to specific productions, most recently Frantic Assembly's Othello, which really engages a young, modern audience through physical theatre and text. And I only hope that, well, I actually know quite a lot of a lot of my students who have gone on to teach, and that is kind of, scary.
I know.
That they're going to be working so hard for the rest of their lives, but it fills me with joy and pride that they have picked up the mantle and and are running with that baton.
And I think as well, it's a good time to mention that what happens, and this is, I suppose, a slightly rhetorical question: what happens to those who don't have, positive teachers in their school or positive experiences of education? Why would they choose teaching when their first look at teaching experienced? And I think that is what leads to the problem around getting people to do the profession as well, because their own experiences in school has not been positive. And one of the things with the research that I've been doing, especially looking at women in leadership and asking them, well, why aren't you going for the headship, or why aren't you doing this? Some people say, I didn't have a great experience when I was at school. I felt let down, and that's why I even left the profession or questioned even going into it. So there is this thing. I don't want to sound like we are constantly recruiting, but as teachers, we're showing children the profession. We're teaching the next generation of teachers, aren't we? Really?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and it's so important. And there's been loads of discussions about this over the last month, I'd say, definitely, on Teachers Talk Radio as well, where, you know, we're talking about, well, you know, it's discussion that happens in the staff room as well, which is that, you know, obviously there's a curriculum that we need to teach. We are always, you know, with regards to A level and GCSE, you know, we're talking around our subject, and, you know, we're hoping that those students who are really engaged are reading around the subject, particularly when we get to A level. But there is a certain amount of content that has to be covered, and there's always debate, isn't there, as to, you know, whether over time the way in which we examine and assess students needs to be changed so that we can inspire a new generation, because the whole world is changing, particularly in terms
Yeah.
of technology. And, you know, and we need to move with those times, and some of the subjects that we teach in school, you know, need to adapt and evolve to the workplace and the marketplace and the roles and jobs that are out there in the world that never even existed 15 years ago.
Yeah, but the problem is, Natalie, we're also losing potential teachers to other professions as well. You know, it's very difficult. Schools are finding it difficult to find, you know, geography teachers. It's quite hard to find certain subjects. I don't want to be going to the stats too much, but you know, one of the problems I had when I was working for a very well-known teacher training organization was that it was very difficult for us to get certain subjects. We couldn't get teachers who could teach that subject because they're taken off into, you know, doing the sciences. And geography is a prime example. Although it comes under the heading of humanities, some of the skills that geography graduates have are taken by, you know, big companies. They're offering a fabulous wage, opportunity to work abroad, you know, all sorts of kind of fancy packages. And we know that we've got our teachers actually going on strike talking at the moment about pay. So, you know, it's very difficult to compete with that, especially when you're recruiting, you know, graduates. You know, I know what, you know, what would I do if I was young, free, single, recently graduated? I would probably want that, you know, few holidays a year when I want to go, a nice car. I might want to think about either renting or buying a property. These things cost a lot of money, and I suppose money talks. And teaching is tough, you know. So that I
Especially in the
think
current climate.
is definitely a big issue.
Mm.
Absolutely,
I know,
absolutely.
absolutely. And, you know, and students are seeing this, aren't they, in the public sector, you know, so many different unions and strikes, and it's very current. It's all over the news at the moment. So how do we get people to stay? How
Yes.
do we retain staff now?
Well, I think for a long time I have said that there needs to be, you know, a targeted approach. When I started you know, yeah, I can see you as the next head of department, and the head would give them a talk, and there'd be like a kind, you know, something happening, and you didn't really know what was going on. So it didn't feel like, for me, and this is very personal, I guess, it didn't feel like opportunities were open. When I went into teaching, I didn't think about somebody, you know, focusing on my professional development. Every professional development meeting was led by me, and it would be something like, you know, I'm just going to learn the curriculum, or I'm going to
Kelly, I'm not sure if I've lost you slightly. I'm not sure if I've lost Kelly.
Hello.
Kelly. Hello. I'm
Hi,
not
did
sure
you
if I
lose
lost
me?
you then. I think so, a little bit. We lost you, and I wasn't sure whether maybe the listeners could hear you, but it seems that my Wi-Fi is strong. I just checked the signal. I'm not sure where we were. Can you hear me now?
Let what I can hear you now. I was just saying that I think that those individual packages for people are
Yes.
really, really key.
Hmm.
Just making sure that people have a package of support which really considers their professional development is absolutely the key to keeping teachers.
Absolutely. And making sure that there is, opportunity for people to professionally grow and reflect on their work and challenges that they can, pick up with regards to progressing up the leadership ladder.
I absolutely, and I think it's really important as well that the opportunities are open to, a number of people in the organization. It shouldn't feel like if you've attended, a couple of sessions at the pub, or you've done a few social events, that you've kind of got one foot into any opportunities. That absolutely shouldn't be how it feels. I think it really has to focus on looking at the individuals, and having a package and them having a champion. I think teachers still need their own champion within their organization.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everyone needs a little bit of praise, and I think often, you know, that I think that could be more forthcoming at times. I think
Yes.
that, for me, very, very recently I took the entire year 7 to see Frozen. And so that was, 155 of us, students, and then the correct ratio of teachers. And then 2 weeks later took the whole of year 8 to see Back to the Future. So this was a mammoth organisational task. And you know what? The loveliest thing was receiving an email the next morning from a year 7, just one out of that 138, but one email saying, "Thank you so much, Miss, for taking me to the theatre. I hadn't had that opportunity before, and I absolutely loved being able to sit with my friends and my whole year group and watch a West End show." And you know what? The next morning, I was absolutely dog tired, and there I was at my desk thinking, how many emails am I going to have to wade through before I go to form? And it just melted my heart and made me think, do you know what? That was worthwhile. And 2 weeks later, there was that one child, as I was walking down the road on the coach back to school, just said, "Oh, thank you, Miss. I had a really good day." And it's those little things, isn't it, that just fills you with joy and makes you go, yeah, that's why I do this. That's why I'm doing this. They are grateful. They do appreciate me, and they're learning stuff, and I'm enthusing them.
It does, and I think we could do be more for our colleagues as well, by thanking them and thinking about, their workload, their day,
Mm.
and just kind of, looking a little bit more outward rather than thinking me all the time, because schools are supposed to be a place of consideration,
Mm.
and being thoughtful. So a little bit of more of that helps. One of the things that has cropped up in the research that I've been doing is
Mm.
people who feel like they're doing somebody else's job, or they are doing a bigger job than they're employed to do. And that is not recognized as well. It almost feels like it becomes part of their regular role. And that's something else that people get very, very upset about. And I suppose many of us can think of situations where we've been, doing something else that a colleague should be doing, or we're not paid to run a certain club, or paid, like you said, to do some of the extras
Mm,
that run into 9, 10 o'clock, that has
mhm.
a huge impact, Natalie. And that is something that, again, we need to consider in schools, because sometimes people just can't cope with anymore.
Absolutely. It's it's that pressure cooker thing, isn't it? It's the boiling pan on the stove, and that lid that's just and it's simmering, and it's, about to overflow or boil dry, and it's just making sure that people can stay afloat, because it is full on from the minute you arrive to, the minute you leave, whatever time that may be. If you're someone who leaves and then takes their work home, or if you're someone who stays in the building until it's all finished so that you can go home and, mentally, you know, just go into your own world and not take your work home. Whoever you are, it's really important that you are supported, and that you're not feeling like you're doing the work of someone else, or something that you're not getting that gratitude for. And there was something I was reading. It was a little bit negative, actually, but it was something that I was reading on Twitter, and it was that someone was saying, I need to make sure that the kids aren't coming into school to watch me work.
Yes.
I need
Yes.
to make sure that I am making the students in front of me work. It was like, someone sort of coming to some kind of realization, that they were working harder in the classroom than their students were.
Absolutely. And these people, our teachers, they're often coming in with the burden of other things as well. And that's something else we don't talk about, that crops up in a lot of the work that I do, which is, around people having other responsibilities. So other caring responsibilities, parents, children, partners, all sorts, the full range, and those pressures as well, and it's so difficult in teaching to take time off to really, what do they call it, come in and be your true self. That's quite hard, because you feel like you're going to be judged. So teachers can often go in with the burden of something that's happening at home as
Mm,
well. um
absolutely. And often I think, because, of this, for the outsiders of the teacher, this stigma of, well, they get such long holidays, it the the thing is, terms are very, very short. um the timetable is so huge. I think we've seen this, what with COVID, where there were gaps, and then you come back into school. For me, as a creative subject, we couldn't go to
yes.
theatre, we couldn't do those things, and then all of a sudden, when everything was back on at full pelt, it was almost overwhelming, because you're suddenly doing 5 times what you were doing, and it was different work then. You were doing resources, you were doing other things, and then it was like 100% on, full on productions, everything. um
Yeah.
and it is exhausting, and you do get to that end of term, and then you hit that first week of holiday, boom, illness hits you, because you have worked non-stop, and
Mm,
and then you just begin to relax in the holiday, and then you get back into the I'm going back and I need to plan. um and I think, with people with outside pressures, responsibility, loss, grief, uh, but teachers kind of have, because we are hard workers. It's a hard-working profession,
yep.
because we feel responsible, because we know that those children are expecting us in that classroom, because we are the continuity for those children, for some of those children, depending on the setting that you're in, depending on what challenges your students face, depending on what area they live in, depending on what, social class or economic, situation they're in. And at the moment, everyone is in. um
Yeah.
it is full on, and it's where do you find that respite, and that balance?
Absolutely. And I think as well, what other profession do you have to set work even if you're feeling unwell? It's
Yeah,
unusual. We are
yeah.
definitely a special breed.
It is a really peculiar thing, and actually, ironically, I was talking about this with someone completely outside of the profession, but actually who works in the emergency services. So other completely different pressures, and and I kind of am in awe of that profession and what they do and what they see on a day-to-day basis. And just that, and I was explaining, and this takes me back. My son's 17 years old, but a bit of personal detail, but I nearly lost him when he was 10 months old, and there I am in hospital. Once he'd stabilized, I'd nipped out into the corridor, and everyone's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I need to set my cover work." And I was in some kind of weird traumatic stress,
Hmm.
nightmare, dream sequence kind of weirdness, where I felt like I needed to do that in order to relax. And there
Yeah,
is no other profession, as far as I'm concerned, where on your sick bed when you're feeling rough, or flu, and you can't get out of bed, COVID, you're setting work, because we are so conscientious, because we don't want to put our colleagues under stress, because we know that when they wake up in the morning, they need to be able to just go in and teach what they need to teach. They don't need to
that's
be
right.
scrapping around to find, some resources to set work for us.
That's right. I don't know. I mean, these are the things that we have to reflect on because they do happen. We know that this is happening, and that's not going to help our teachers to stay. So it's thinking about these things.
Yeah, and being mindful. So on that
Yes.
note, I'm just going to play in our news and information about our sponsor. So we will rejoin you in a couple of minutes, and then we'll be picking up, thinking about how we recruit more teachers and the challenges of leadership, and finding out more about your doctoral research, Kelly.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, a leading publisher of books, directories, educational guides and magazines specifically aimed at forward-thinking schools in the UK and beyond. Have you checked out their latest releases? Don't miss out! Visit johncattbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading!
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
The iNews website covers the issue of vaping in schools. Whilst vaping is thought to have helped many adults kick their unhealthy smoking habits, the rise in straight to vaping in young people and children rings alarm bells for many. The report focuses on concerns expressed by teachers about angsty pupils struggling with the wait for their next fix. Vapers making school toilets frightening places as they gather in groups, increases in internal truancy, and worries it may lead to pupils experimenting with stronger substances. Some schools have made significant changes to toilets to include sophisticated sensors which set off an alarm when e-cigarettes are used, whilst increased numbers of staff on duty in corridors to deter pupils from skipping lessons in order to vape. Many schools have also invited police and health specialists in to talk about vaping in a bid to educate pupils on the dangers. Many schools across the UK now ban vapes, treating them like other banned items such as drugs and knives. This is prompting suspensions and other high-level sanctions in a bid to remove them from schools. England's Chief Medical Officer, Professor Sir Chris Whitty, said last week that the number of children vaping was appalling, and heavily criticised companies which produce them in flavours such as green gummy bear and watermelon bubblegum. The bright colours, shapes reminiscent of highlighter pens, and the low cost of around £5 making them attractive to youngsters with pocket money to spare, which Whitty described as utterly unacceptable. The proportion of 11 to 17-year-olds who say they have tried vaping rose from 14% to 16% in 2022, according to a YouGov survey, with a percentage of children who regularly vape doubling in the same time period. The article also features references to Teachers Talk Radio's Tom Rogers tweet asking how much of a problem vaping was for schools, with many replies indicating it is a serious cause for concern. Full details of the article are available online. In related news, many media outlets have been reporting on so-called school protests, which seem to be focused on toilets and the right to use them as a key issue. According to multiple stories, pupils have been encouraged to protest about rules focused on restricting free access to toilets by posts on social media platforms such as TikTok. The majority of the schools affected make it clear that rules around access to toilets are made for safeguarding purposes, designed to protect all pupils and to minimise bullying, vaping, and other antisocial behaviours. The Evening Standard reports that a quarter of UK student gamblers may be experiencing harm, whilst half said betting had affected their university experience. The survey of over 2,000 students at UK universities was conducted in December. It found that 71% of the respondents had gambled in the last 12 months, with 24% exhibiting problem gambling behaviour. Of the students who said gambling had had an impact on their experiences at university, 13% said they'd had trouble paying for food, 10% had missed lectures, and 9% struggled to pay bills. A third of student gamblers said they spent between £11 to £20 per week, with 13% admitting to a spend of between £50 and £100 per week. Only 55% of those surveyed were aware that support for them was available through their universities. Full details of the report are due at the end of February. Finally, Aberdeen Live reports on a project led by the University of Aberdeen, which has led to a successful trial of a new approach to teaching which is helping improve adult literacy in Rwanda. The project adapted the existing adult educational curriculum to better develop relevant knowledge and skills which can be applied in students' daily lives. These techniques included role play, group activities, case studies, and problem solving. Previously, only 14% of those pursuing an adult learning course felt they had gained the skills they needed, with 66% still unable to read and 76% unable to write by the end of the course. The new method showed improvements in multiple areas, with adults retaining their knowledge and skills, which were linked to nutrition and hygiene, improved household income, animal husbandry, and becoming community leaders. The project was funded by the Scottish Government. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Jo Fox.
And a reminder that this show is brought to us in partnership with John Katz Educational, a leading publisher of books, directories, educational guides, and magazines. So, Kelly, we were discussing how we can recruit more teachers into the profession.
Yes.
And yes.
Natalie, I was just thinking about this as well, because it's not just about recruiting more teachers, it's also about getting teachers to consider leadership as well. And one of the things that I think about often and reflect on is that I had really supportive parents. There was no doubt that they wanted me to do well, but I didn't have access in terms of, like work experience or somebody else who could show me what leadership looked like in education. I didn't have that. I was, this black girl from Brixton. I'd never been taught by a black teacher. I wasn't actually taught by a black teacher until I went to university, and then had a black lecturer. So I didn't see it. And, they talk about you need to see it, to be it type of thing. And I think now what I would love to see is more people thinking about leading in schools. But I also know it's a tough job. Leading any kind of leadership, from middle leadership right through to senior leadership, is tough. And that's really why I decided to do a doctorate in education, was to look more closely at how do we get people to stay and how do we get them to lead. And that is what we want, because we don't want people to stay for 2 years and then go off and do something else. We want them to stay and manage our schools.
And that's, do you know what? It's a really, really interesting reflection there, because it's something that myself and my colleague talk about quite regularly. Obviously, I had a slightly different experience to you, even though we were in the same school. And these were not things that I probably would even have thought about in my, teenage naivety. I just spent a lot of time looking at a particular sixth former when I was in year 7, thinking, "Oh my goodness, I really want to be like her." And now she is, she's all over Netflix all the time in some really big shows. And so I was looking at completely different things. I was, oh, I want to be like this person, and I want to perform in this production, and different challenges, different things that I was inspired by. But absolutely, it's another thing as well, we were in a girls' school,
Yeah.
and it was predominantly run by female teachers. In fact, all the senior leadership roles were women.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that was a strong thing for us in terms of aspiration. And I just remember those assemblies. We had a lot of assembly. Girls, you can do anything you want to, anything you put your mind to. And I think they, in turn, particularly the head teacher and the 2 deputies, were very much, inspired by Margaret Thatcher, the Iron Lady. They even modelled their hair on her. But
Indeed.
and it is about what you see on a daily basis. And coming back to a point that you made earlier on in the show, about what if a child, if a student doesn't have a great experience at school, then then they're going to want to get as far away from education and school as possible. And in primary school, I know myself, when I was in primary school, I had, and I don't know how much this has changed now. I can't speak for the primary sector, but I was stuck with one teacher for the whole year. We didn't really have a Perry teacher that came in and did a bit of music with you, and it was that one teacher teaching you all the subjects. And
Yeah.
whilst one year I had a phenomenal, amazing teacher who inspired me, who encouraged me, who nursed me, who, gave me praise. There were sticker charts, there was all sorts going on. Another year, um, it happened to be a male teacher, and he was very biased towards the boys. And the boys were at
Yeah.
the front, and in maths, they had their hand up constantly. I needed more thinking time in maths. Maths has never and will never be my strong point. I only need to do percentages. I only need to do an Excel spreadsheet. That's what I need to do, and that's me. And put the children into groups, and work out how many parts there are in this play. But in that environment, I felt like I was a bit silenced, and that I needed more time. Oh, they've answered it. Oh, I won't try. And if a student feels like that, they're not going to thrive and want to stay in education.
No. And that's the thing. And I just try to think of ways that we can make sure that people do want to stick around, and that we make leadership, as I said, appealing, because we want those kind of teachers that don't really, or didn't care enough years ago. I think it's got a lot better now, but we want the good ones to really, really stay and work with our children. And I think that the idea of having, diversity in leadership is really important. I'm based in London. And what I see in the schools, and I'm just looking at what's coming through at the chat, that primary schools do a fabulous job. Like, people speak very, very positively, mostly about their primary school experience. It just seems slightly different to the secondary schools. And I know we both do secondary, but secondary can be, it can be a harsh place. It can be a harsh place if you don't feel accepted. It can be a harsh place if you don't feel included. And all the work that they do on inclusivity and diversity, it can only work when you can win over the hearts of people, because we all know what the right things are mostly, but it's just about making sure that it actually happens in practice. There's no point having, these fabulous assemblies about, being nice to everybody, and diversity is great and inclusion is great, and we're going to do, a month to recognize this and a month to recognize that. And then everybody just goes back, and the curriculum doesn't work, and the person that feels left out still feels left out, and neurodiversity is considered not top priority. All of these things, it all matters. And I think all of these factors can coexist positively at the same time to make really positive schools. I still believe I still believe it's possible.
Absolutely. And I guess these are the challenges that schools face day to day, year by year.
They do. And I think, we need to get the right people into the right posts. And I think one of the things that happened to me, even when I did consider leadership, because I was from sort of like South London, I was teaching in one of my first schools was a school in Tooting. And it was a really challenging secondary school, boys' school. And as I kind of grew in confidence and experience, they were like pushing me down the pastoral route, and I wanted to do that. I want to be head of year. These are the kids, they're from my area. I get it. I understand it. I know what they're talking about. But actually, we need to make sure that we're not just pushing teachers because we think they have some sort of connection with the students because of, I don't know, religion or race or culture into the pastoral roles. What about the academic roles as well? And I think now I see myself as more of an academic lead. I actually think I'm not as strong pastorally. I don't think I've got that. I haven't got the right temperament, Natalie, if I'm honest, because I think I haven't. No, you have to be honest. I get too emotional. It's a bit much for me. Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's we try not to, but we do take our job home with us sometimes. It can be emotional. As a creative, as a drama teacher, I know over the years, if students are struggling with socially fitting in, or if students are, I have had over the last 23 years, I can count on on four hands the amount of students, so it's probably one a year, over time, who have come out to me because they feel that I am in a world, much as I am a teacher, I also kind of Venn diagram because I previously acted professionally and still move in those circles, because of my theatre podcast, because of my connections with producers, directors, actors, people from drama school, etc. They know that I'm in that world, and it is a more diverse world in different ways. And so if they're going to come and talk it out with anyone, we would be an area, drama, maybe art, possibly music, where students who maybe feel that they don't fit in certain ways feel that they really do fit in there, and they can be in a production and they're maybe with students who are 2, 3, 4, 4 years older than them, or and they feel that they can then walk around the playground and they're getting a high five or a fist pump from a kid that's 3 years older than them, and it makes them feel a sense of belonging, and that they have a kind of little kind of niche or family within the school. And and it's just, for me, I have always been subject based. I went into the teaching profession because I knew, because of what I said earlier on about the passion for my subject and wanting to teach that to students and to help them grow, and to go off, whether it's social skills and communication skills and teamwork skills, life skills that they can take with them, or whether it's the ones who want to go and be producers, directors, actors, writers, or work on the technical side of theatre. I've got a lot of students that have gone off to be set designers or costume designers. One's currently working or was working on Six and then went to Broadway with it, and this is super proud moments. But for me, it's always been the subject, And whenever anyone has tried to push me in a pastoral route, I have dug my heels in. I became head of drama at the end of my first teaching year, at the end of my, newly qualified teacher year, and that's where I sit, and I did then become head of arts faculty at one point, where I was heading up 7 different departments, and that was an interesting role, but it was then so far away from my passion and my subject, which is drama, that I then sideways stepped off, went into the independent sector and took a director of drama role, because then I could be more creative and have more projects. But it is really, really interesting. And then for me, I kind of think, well, where would I go next? It would only be a deputy head role where I was in charge of the arts.
Well, yes. I mean, yeah, and that's difficult, because you do less teaching as you kind of take on that, senior roles, and that is hard, especially because you have such a passion for your subject. Lots of people feel that they're missing out. They kind of become deputy head and they don't get to teach as much, and very few head teachers actually get to teach at all.
At all, I know.
Yeah. I think it might be better in the primary world, because I know lots of head teachers who are in primary schools really do try to do something and nip in, but secondary schools, that's sad. I don't think they do that much.
It's tough. I mean, I know in the sort of 4 or 5 different schools that I've worked in, sometimes you do have a deputy head and they might have some lessons. I mean, I remember when we were at school, I had the head teacher for chemistry. That was really scary. But often, and I remember this as a student as well, of the however many lessons a term, I think I saw her for a fraction of those, because there was always something, or an emergency, or a meeting, or something they're being called to. And I think that is why, less and less, deputy heads are in the classroom. I think they try to keep their toe in. But I think, especially recently, with all, the heaps and heaps of things they've had to deal with COVID, with, all the new regulations, changes, exams, how those have changed and then not changed and then change. There's been so much that I think it would be impossible to try and regularly be in the classroom with a group of students effectively.
I'm actually quite worried as well, because I think that I feel like we will run out of people wanting to do those headship roles. That's a concern for me. I think there's something that's shifted in society, in that if you make one mistake, or you do something, and I'm not talking about massive things, I'm talking about quite small things, because obviously you should be held to account. I think people are so nervous about what can happen, even the way that social media is used, in a school, and if you make an error. So I do worry that shortage of leadership within our schools is going to be a problem. We don't want everybody who's a head teacher just to be, another bursar, or do you know what I mean, or a financial director. That's not the job. I think head teacher, as the name suggests, is head teacher, somebody that leads the teachers, not the paperwork. And I just feel like it's becoming less and less fashionable to be a head teacher in schools.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's not something I'd thought about until now.
Well, I mean, doing doctoral research, and I definitely recommend it. I mean, people ask me all the time, Kelly, you're crazy. How can you do that? How can you still be studying? And it's so hard. But actually, it helps me to be a better person in schools. I observe, I look, I watch. I'm very sensitive to when people are feeling the way that they feel. And research, the kind of research I do, because it's qualitative research, it's very personal. I sit face to face with people. I look into their eyes. I ask them about their primary school experience, why they teach. Is there, anything in their personal life which affects their life as a teacher. And there can be tears and like real sort of like sharing in these environments. And I think it's really just made me a better person. So I would definitely recommend it. I mean,
Yeah,
it's been a
sounds
great journey.
it sounds really interesting, really fascinating. A doctorate in education, and I've begun to be thinking this. Do I want to start an MA? So and then workload has just got crazy. It's that term where you think, do you know what? Stop. Think about it in the next half term. Think about it over Easter. But yeah, so you look at the challenges of leadership, especially for women within your doctorate, or?
I do, especially for women and especially for Black women. My focus is definitely more in London, which has its own sort of uniqueness, let us say. But yeah, I look at the challenges for Black women in leadership, and it's complicated. But just as a sort of like overview, that again, if you're working in a school as a Black woman where there are children that are from ethnic minorities, you end up being the go-to person for those things. It's, who's going to sort out Black History Month? Who's going to, sort out, and that's not actually what your role should be. So, I do say to schools, if you're choosing the one sort of, Black teacher that works in the history department or leadership to be responsible for all the diversity drives in the school, you need to stop it. That's not the way to go. But often, for leadership, it can be just a number of factors and not feeling that their face fits, because sometimes it can be in you as well. It's really difficult to kind of step up to say, look, employ me. And I have some people saying, that they're in teams where there's already a senior Black leader, so they don't feel that the school will employ another one, almost like that box has been ticked.
Oh, wow.
And you have to say, look, no, go for the job, push through that and definitely go for that. So it's been an eye opener, and even looking at things like accents, Natalie. I speak to women
Yeah.
who have regional accents, maybe, like Northerners, and, and they say that they've tried to change the way that they speak, or they were educated in another country, and they say, they try to speak with more of a, an English tone to their voice, so
That is really interesting. Do you know that
yeah.
that is in my very first teaching school. I was in Ilford, in Redbridge, and in an incredibly ethnically diverse school. And in fact, I would say I felt like I was, as a white female, I felt like I was more in the minority. And as I looked out across my classroom, I thought, oh, what do they think of me? I
Yeah.
almost felt like I needed to gain, do I want to say gain their respect? I don't know. I felt like I needed to get them on side,
Yeah.
in order to respect me, to identify with me. Which I didn't need to do at all, because they were completely receptive to me and my teaching
Absolutely.
style and my personality and my energy and my intonation and the way in which I was teaching English and drama to them. And it was incredible. There were so many different languages spoken. And in fact, when I was there for 6 years, and when I returned from maternity leave, in order to fit into my part-time schedule of 3 days, I took on a little bit of RE teaching, a little bit of religious education, and which surprised me. And and it was more, they were presenting to me things about their religion, and I was learning with them. And actually, it was really fun, because we sort of, we made it more dramatic, and it was really kind of exciting, and energetic, and I really loved it. It was a completely different experience from my teaching which had been over in Essex, and completely a different diversity. And I think that's what's part of the excitement of the profession, to teach in very different settings is incredibly exciting.
It's a gift. It's
You know,
definitely a
I
gift.
went to a girls' school with you. I've taught like you in a boys' school. I was in a boys' school for 7 years, a boys' comprehensive. I've taught in state sector. I've taught in the independent sector, and all of those experiences have been wonderful and very different. And the ways in which I've been able to teach my subject and creativity again have been very diverse and very different challenges. And so I find that we've got so much to say, but we're coming up to the end of the show. So it's been wonderful speaking to you, Kelly. Is there any words of wisdom that you have to wrap us up for the evening? Our very tired teachers at 10 p.m.
And appreciate each other and work together. And know that people out there are there if you want to speak to anybody. And if you want to be a leader, definitely do it. It's definitely worth it.
Absolutely. Well, it has been wonderful speaking to you this evening, Kelly. It's been nice reminiscing about our school days
Thank you.
as well.
Thank you so much.
And I just want to say a big thank you to Teachers Talk Radio, to the Teachers Talk Radio family for their help and support with my show this evening. There's loads of shows worth listening to. That this show was brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, a leading publisher of books, directories, educational guides and magazines, specifically aimed at forward-thinking schools in the UK and beyond. Have you checked out their latest releases? Don't miss out. Visit johncattbookshop.com to explore their range of titles and advance your own professional development today. It's been a joy speaking to you all this evening. It's been wonderful, and a show to look, if you've enjoyed our topic, a show to look out for coming up on the Saturday breakfast show with Darren Lester. He's going to be talking about his topic is actually why bother teaching, and he's going to be discussing the drop in initial teacher training. So thanks a lot. I've been Natalie Marr. This has been the Late Tuesday Night Show, and I look forward to catching up with you in a fortnight's time.